For our guest.
Who is the man that would risk his neck for his brother, man?
Shaft!
Nice. Chris Arps, happy birthday, young man.
Thank you. Boy, it feels good to be 35.
Yeah, I'll bet it does.
It does.
Yeah, I haven't
Really
seen
good.
that one for a while. I didn't think you had either, but I must have been mistaken.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Hey, happy birthday to you, by the way. We have some signage in the studio, and if you lift it up, your gift is underneath.
Oh!
How about that?
That was
I
slick.
bought you a flight. A flight of tiny little bottles with brown liquid in them, and you can enjoy them for your birthday later today.
That
Different
was
flavors.
Slick. I thought it was just
Thank
a
you.
thing saying happy
I know
birthday.
you did. That's
Wow.
why I was over there guarding it so you wouldn't lift it up.
Wow.
You see that?
Oh, that's a bunch
So
of
happy
fine
birthday!
liquor.
I'm thinking. I'm just saying. I just want you to enjoy yourself
And the cigar
later.
is...
Yeah, sorry, I failed on that one. He didn't ask for much, does he?
Beggars can't be... What is it, choosers,
Becky's
Becky,
got it
or
tough.
whatever?
I'm telling you what. Yeah, that's it. So you got any big plans for your birthday? What are you doing?
No. You know what we're going to probably do this weekend? Becky and I have a bucket list of going to presidential libraries.
Right.
So we've been to 7 of them. There's one more that's in driving distance, and that is the Slick Willie's Library, Museum, and Massage Parlor in Little Rock.
Nice.
we're going
Is it
there.
true there's red neon on the outside of that?
We will
I'd
see.
heard that rumor.
I'll bring you pictures.
And Barack Obama's, when they get it built in Chicago, will be within driving
That'll
distance.
be in the driving
And that one's
distance.
going to have bulletproof windows, I understand.
Probably.
Necessary, depending on where it is.
Yeah, it's going to be in the hood, which is going to be very interesting. A presidential museum in the hood.
Oh, boy. You know what? This Confederate monument story is on the front page of the Post today. Every couple days, somebody goes over there and they spray paint it again, and then they clean it up. And I don't. What's your take on this? You know, we're going to have Peggy Hubbard on the show in the 2:00 hour today. She's planning a rally over there this weekend in support of just leaving the darn thing alone. You know, in other words, I'm going to not put words in Peggy's mouth because she's perfectly capable of explaining what she wants to do. But what's your take on this thing?
You know, I'm very conflicted about it. Anybody that reads my Facebook page or knows me knows that I am not a huge fan of the Confederate flag or that whole Southern heritage dealing with that. But I look at all the problems that are going on in North St. Louis, the murders, the mayhem, the economic disadvantage, and it just makes me wonder, with all of those problems that are going on in the African-American community, is the removal of a Confederate statue really something that should be one of our top priorities? And I don't think so. You know, the Post-Dispatch gave me a very interesting perspective on this a couple of weeks ago when they did a story on it. And when this was first suggested in 1904, there was a bunch of people didn't want it, just like they do now. But the Post-Dispatch editorial board was actually in favor of putting this monument there. And the reason for that was they wanted to foster further reconciliation between the North and the South, because if you remember, the Civil War was less than 50 years old at that time, and there were still a lot of harsh feelings. So that's what I hate, that I think that has been lost in this 100 years, where people think, oh, St. Louis must have been really racist to put a Confederate statue up in a public park. But it wasn't. That's been lost in the 100-year history. They were doing it mostly for reconciliation.
Right. And I've argued that most of the people that want it gone didn't even know it was there until they saw it in the paper.
I had no idea it was there.
I'm just saying. You know, you could drive past it. Most people probably didn't stop to read the inscription on it. But now it's got to be gone.
Yeah.
And the mayor still seems to be committed to finding a way to do that. I just think it's a crying shame that that's the focus.
And Mark, what I said, if this was so horrific and it's so offensive, you would think the city could scrape up a few dollars somewhere to have this statue removed. I mean, I know the city's having, budget crunch and everything, but you can't scrape up some money to move this statue.
We've talked to people on this show last week who offered to do it for free, and nobody's taken them up on it. So anyway, I don't think they want it gone pretty big, because if he offered to move it for free and they wouldn't take him up on it, they got their own agenda.
Yeah. And the underlying thing of this is this whole Confederate monument statue thing is the first salvo in the 2021 mayoral race, because Lyda Crewson brought this up first. Lyda Crewson is basically a placeholder mayor. If the African American community can coalesce around one candidate, that person will be the next mayor. And I think Mayor Crewson was trying to throw that out to say, hey, you know, I'm for the black people, I'm for the cause. I think Tashara saw that, knew that this was the first salvo, and that's when she put out this GoFundMe account to raise money to get rid of this statue. So this is mayoral politics more than anything.
Interesting. Yeah, I hadn't even thought of it that way.
That's why you had me on, Mark.
That's true. Let me switch to Jared Kushner.
Okay.
Right now, we're waiting for the White House press briefing to start, which I'm sure whoever's doing that today, and I'm guessing it'll be Sean Spicer, will get peppered with questions. But the media hasn't even started filling in the seats, so I know they're not getting ready to start. 5 o'clock Friday afternoon, Memorial Day weekend, this thing drops.
Yeah.
And all weekend, it's all the liberals had to stew about, all the mainstream media had to stew about. And by the end of it, there were people calling for Jared Kushner's resignation based on a Washington Post report of communications intercepted between a couple of Russians, even though it's known that the Russians routinely lie in those communications because they know they're monitored.
And you forgot one part of the story. Anonymous sources.
It's an anonymous source. Oh,
Sources.
Sure.
So, hey, I agree with Senator Lindsey Graham on this one, where he said that I believe this story is about as far as I can throw it. Jared Kushner is naive and has never been in politics before and is a newbie, but I can't imagine him wanting to go to the Russians and saying, I want to set up some secret back channel communication at your embassy. Is just hard for me to believe. And I think Lindsey Graham's explanation is plausible, where he said the Russians know that they're being monitored, so they say this type of stuff, to embarrass the administration.
You've been in political consulting for how many years?
Oh, probably 15.
Okay. And you've worked for a number of candidates,
yes.
All of them Republican
Yes.
candidates? Okay. I heard Chris Wallace make this point last week. And I made it over the weekend to Annie Fry. So in my 26 years or so in the business of journalism and media, Wallace said in his 40 years of business in journalism and media, he's never seen anything like the level of media-led attacks with the willing cooperation of leakers who oppose this administration. Would you agree with that? Do you think it's unprecedented for that to happen at a headline like that at 5 o'clock on a holiday weekend? It was done intentionally. Yeah. That's what they've had this information for a couple of months,
and it's just unprecedented because we're 120 something days into an administration, and literally within the first month, they were talking about impeachment. So we've never seen. This is just unprecedented. The leaks, the attacks on trying to get this president, and I think really they're going to put too much stuff out there trying to get Trump, and I think the public is basically just not going to pay attention to it, because unless you start getting a smoking gun or something that is really significant, all of these stories every week with all of this, maybe this could be this or maybe that, I think the public's just going to lose interest with it. And I think people of good conscience will see the media's after this guy. This is not even remotely fair.
I hope so. I haven't seen that poll yet, but they ought to do it. Maybe we'll do our Twitter poll on that today. I haven't talked to Tony, but I think our Twitter poll that ought to be the Twitter poll today. If people who are fair-minded, aren't you getting a little tired of the piling on, because that just seems to be what it is with very little evidence.
And I'm going to send you. I was going to send it to you on my way down here, but I forgot. There's a YouTube video of a Bernie Sanders supporter who is saying people in Ohio don't care about Russia and what's going on with that stuff. So I'm going to send you that. So hopefully you can play that on the show and hear that. And that's probably
was it a lady? Was it a lady?
I don't know.
I think I might have heard that.
Somebody sent me the link and I didn't tell he sent me the link.
Did
and
he?
I didn't look at it.
We'll check that out. All right. That's Chris Arps. I'm Mark Cox. 314-969-9797. You can call us toll free at 866-455-9797. Your thoughts?